Hey guys, it's Katie, and I'm here today to do a review of The Tears of the Salamander by Peter Dickinson. I'm actually highly surprised that I'm doing a review for this book because I actually wasn't sure I was gonna love it as much as I did, but holy crap, did I love this book. It's just one of those books that I heard about a year or so ago, and it sounded intriguing and like I might potentially like it, and so I added it to my TBR, and then I was able to just get it for really, really cheap on Amazon. And oh my goodness gracious, did I love this book. So basically, what it's about is it follows our main protagonist, who's named Alfredo, and he is a chorister. So it starts out at the beginning of the book with him living with his parents and his brother in a little town in Italy. I mean, this whole book takes place in Italy, but that's besides the point. And for his name day, which is kind of like a birthday, he was given this special pendant by his uncle. And the pendant is of a salamander. And it, as we later find out, that pendant gives him musical ability, or at least heightens a musical ability. And so he ends up getting, drafted, I guess you want to call it, to be a chorister. And there are different tracks that you can take. Being a chorister, you can either go through a process of being castrated and becoming, staying a tenor or becoming a countertenor, or you can just, let life take its course and become kind of a baritone or bass. And before he can decide what path he's going to take, his parents and brother were killed in a fire. And his uncle ends up coming in and kind of taking him away to this very remote island where he lives. And we find out that the uncle is a sorcerer and kind of the master of the mountain. And a lot of the magic and alchemy that he does is because of the salamander that lives there. And kind of go from there. The book is so incredibly good. I'm going to do my normal breakdown as I usually do, just so I can keep this somewhat coherent. It's one of the best books I've read this year, and it is definitely the best book I've read in like 2 months, so I'm really happy about that. But first, talking about the writing. The writing is very lyrical and actually quite beautiful. At first, I don't normally, as you guys know, I don't normally pay attention to it. But as time was going on, I realized how lovely the writing was and how actually kind of in some ways core it was to the story itself. And so the writing was just so well done. It really draws you in and enhances the story in a way that you don't necessarily expect it to. So I really liked that aspect. Talking a little bit about the world building. The world building is very interesting as well. It primarily takes place in Italy, which, as we all know, is a real place. But it has all of these fantastical elements to it, especially in regards to this island. Everything about this world building is centered on music in a very, very big way. Both the notes themselves and the lyrics that are being expressed, it's almost used as a language form. And it was honestly one of my favorite parts of the entire book, because all of these songs are real songs. They're all choral pieces. A lot of them were psalms, like Psalm 137 was heavily featured at points in the book. But there are so many others as well. And they all have a common theme to them, and that theme is of fire and things like that. And it all becomes more relevant as the story goes on, and it makes more sense as things go on. But oh my God, it was absolutely beautiful, because there were a few times where it's like, I want to know or remind myself what this piece sounds like. So I looked it up on Spotify or whatever, and I listened to it. I was like, oh wow, okay. So I mean, just the fact that these songs actually exist and you like listen to them along with reading the story, it just really, really enhances your experience. It's like basically having a soundtrack while reading the book, was a fan, would recommend. And then also just the alchemy aspect of it, while it's not necessarily the most important part of the whole thing, but a lot of what happens is when you sing a song, the salamander cries, and their tears have special powers to them. Whether it's for creating alchemy things or whether it's healing something, they have very, very important powers to them. And so that added just an extra lovely thing to it. Then talking a bit about the plot. The plot was somewhat predictable, but also somewhat not. Which for me was a bit surprising. I mean, this is a middle grade, and normally middle grades are, very predictable. This particular book had a certain complexity to it, despite it being a middle grade, if you know what I mean. So the plot is fairly simplistic. Our Alfredo, choir boy, taken away by uncle to live with him for some purpose or another, and whatnot. But there's this underlying mystery as well, kind of. And as time went on, it got more and more predictable, and I was able to kind of like figure out how it's gonna go and whatnot. But there were times where I was like, where is this thing going, and how does this tie into this thing? I mean, it was absolutely fascinating, and I just really, really enjoyed it. I mean, can you tell? But overall, the plot was very engaging and had a lot going for it, but it still had that aspect of predictability, but not to the point where it was detrimental to the book, if you know what I mean. So I was a fan of that. And then last but not least, the characters. The cast of characters in this book are not very vast. It's Alfredo, and then there's the uncle. Those are the two, I guess you could call them, main characters. But then there are a few side characters as well, like Tony. It was really interesting seeing Alfredo's interactions with all of them and kind of just seeing his personality shine out in different ways. He's a surprisingly complex character, but he's also like, I don't know how to describe him, but I really liked Alfredo's character. He was absolutely fascinating. He was also a little bit irritating at times, but not to the point of where I was like, I literally hate you and want nothing to do with you. But he's just really interesting, and I loved Tony. I loved Tony so much. He was such an interesting character. And I mean, the thing about Tony and his mother is that they are both I don't know if I want to call them chosen mutes, but they don't talk really at all or very often. And as the book goes on, you kind of find out a little bit more as to why. But the thing that's really neat is Alfredo is able to connect, particularly with Tony, through music, whether it's through singing or through playing an instrument. And then there's a lot of like nonverbal conversation stuff going on that I really, really enjoyed between both Alfredo and Tony and Tony's mother. Like, it was just really, really lovely to see that aspect as well. But also just communicating with the salamanders. Like, I really liked the salamanders a lot as well. They're just an absolutely fascinating take on a kind of a fantasy creature in a way. I mean, salamanders really do exist, but they added fantastical elements to it, and it just made it that much more fascinating to me. The uncle was intriguing but also infuriating, and as the book goes on, he becomes more so, and it's just super unusual. And I don't know, I really, really liked all the characters as well. Just overall, the entire book was worth it. It really sucks you in. You feel like you're there, you're immersed into the experience. And then also just having that music, and if you choose to listen to it as you're reading. I read it kind of like I read the chapter and then I was like, okay, music thing came up. Let's go listen to it. So I just took like periodic breaks to get to listen to the music so I could have that extra soundtrack along with it. And I would recommend doing that because it really does enhance your experience. And since there's a recurring theme of certain songs, you'll just have them in your head as it's going, so you're kind of able to follow along a little bit more. But I just loved this book so much, and I would highly recommend it to really anyone, honestly, because, as I said, the fact that I am literally saying that this was the best book that I read in like 2 months is kind of a big deal. But anyway, that's about all I've got for you guys today. If you read this book or are planning on reading this book, please feel free to leave me a comment down below or come find me on Twitter and we can talk about it, because I'm really into wanting to talk about this book right now. And other than that, you guys know the drill. I have both my social media links down below. I have my Twitter, which is @ASeaOfTomes, which is the same as my handle here. And I also have a Goodreads where you guys can go check out what I'm reading and see my progress and my very superficial thoughts before I come over here and scream at you about it. But other than that, I'll catch you later with another video soon. Bye!